Grog.
Hey everyone, it's the Sideshow Podcast with me, Peter Fickling, and Matthew Weir. Kerry is away, as we said last week and the week before. She's in Australia, so watch out. It's not the dingo, it's Kerry. She's got your baby, and by baby I mean a big burly man or your pork pie.
Yeah, I'll be glad to hear when she gets back that she's survived Australian barbecues and all the dangers of the animals that she might come across. To be honest, I wouldn't a king brown snake, a redback spider, I wouldn't fancy their chances against Kerry.
No, exactly, yeah. All of Australia's terrifying wildlife versus Warbeasts, it's still 1-0 to the UK. What's Kerry been missing out on, Matthew? I saw some rather unkind reviews on Twitter. People were suggesting it's been a bit of a tawdry week, but I really liked George this week. I don't like George, but I really liked, the character, what they've done with him this week. He made some very good points. And I thought that Lizzie in mega Karen mode was sort of weirdly entertaining and also annoying. So it was like a strange duality. I was both annoyed and entertained for most of the week.
Yeah, I got very annoyed listening to the Lizzie scenes with Neil and Oliver. Firstly, let's just pick off that George thing. George, he made good points in relation to what? Because I feel like he was just starting to stir shit up again between Will and Ed.
I think he made a very good point that he's been given a tough time at school because he's got this incredibly unusual family where his, it's like some kind of weird cult. It's like the Branch Davidian compound with kind of like, 5 dads, 3 mums, all the grandparents living together. You've got your odd granddad who's driving a limo around that doesn't work. And, you can see how it would be reputational, what's it called? Cyanide.
Which one is David Koresh? Will or Ed?
I think, between the two of them, they got it covered. Neither of them's that inspiring. Maybe Emma is David Koresh. She's got the kind of, the raw charisma necessary.
And she's the one that's sleeping with all of them. So
yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I've accidentally hit the nail on the head. Yeah.
Yeah. What we need is Harrison to pull tanks up and then surround the compound.
Yeah. If his new faith will let him, I would quite like to see Harrison blazing his way through Ambridge behind with a drone impaired Russian tank. Should we pop an ad in and then do this properly?
Yes.
Did you see what I meant at all about George kind of like feeling a little bit of sympathy for George for once? Like, before he was this kind of one-dimensional baddie kind of ne'er-do-well character. And actually I did start to see how he might be a bit more confused and sort of understandably battered by life.
Yeah, the whole thing about the bully is often the bullied,
yeah.
You mean. Yeah, I don't have any issues with the fact that he was being teased at school about it. Of course he would. And kids are horrific, right? I teach kids. If they spot a weakness or a chink in your arm, fair play to you for having kids, Peter and Kerry, couldn't do it myself. But if they spot a weakness in a peer that they feel like ripping the shit into, they will do it and they will run with it. And, in the age of who knows what George is going through, it might not just be face to face because you're dealing with that whole thing of online bullying as well, aren't you? Whereas, you can't see how the other kid is reacting, so you just keep going and it becomes a pile-on. So maybe he's taking flack on social media as well about the fact that he does have this quite unique situation. And, what was he said that the kids asked, did your mum know who she was sleeping with, or she couldn't make her mind up? I like the bit where she said, are you a threesome? And Will went, He's like, think, has it crossed his mind on those cold, lonely nights when he sat there, stroking a ferret? That's not a euphemism.
Sorry, my brain's turned to crap. Who was the one who died of sepsis? Who was the one who died of sepsis?
Nick,
yeah, sorry. So, once Nick turned up, that's when Will was able to kind of move on effectively, wasn't it? But I did think it was a bit sort of disingenuous the way he was like, oh, well, I'm past it. It's like, yeah, you are now, but but your son grew up in the environment when it was anything but friendly. How old would George have been when they finally buried the hatchet? I mean, he would have
Oh,
been 10 or something, like 7, 8, 10. Well, certainly old enough to be very, very confused and upset by, you know, Will triumphantly pinning his paternity test up on the wall, and Ed
mm.
stomping around, and Emma kind of, and then, what was there? And there was also that awful confusion when Will tried it on with Emma. I mean, anyway, I'm on George's side specifically to this.
And there was also that thing recently where when he spoke about Nick, where he said his first real memory of Nick was getting a clout round the ear from her. So
Yeah.
he is obviously a little bit messed up. No, I get that, and maybe he's doing it unconsciously, although George does have form. But I feel like this is the beginnings of him stirring something up between the
Mm.
Grundy brothers, which has been laying dormant for some time. And God forbid, yeah. I mean, we've had Will with the shotgun, haven't we? But I mean, God forbid we end up with the pendulum swinging back the other way, and Will ending up in Emma's bed.
Oh no, it's just, I mean, okay, it's going to take a hell of a lot of writing and good acting to sell that to the audience.
Yeah, if Emma just wants to get off the hook, she just wears that coat that her and Fallon have got, and everyone will get well confused. No one will know what the is going on.
When George finds out what Nick was actually capable of, he'll feel quite grateful he just got smacked round the face rather than being run over, knocked down like a dog in the street.
Yes, well, she can never. She took that with her, didn't she? Well, it was a deathbed confession, wasn't it?
Was it Matt that she ran over?
Yeah, she ran over Matt. Yeah, your
Yes, I
golden
should
boy.
absolutely hate Nick. Exactly. Yeah, Matt, my absolute favourite character of all time.
Well, I mean, if you use the modal verb should there, Peter. If you want to spend the rest of your days hating a fictional character who is actually dead, then go for your life.
Well, to repeat what we said last week, Matthew, that this is the whole point of this podcast. When I was moaning about, it is what we do. But seeing as we're talking about hating fictional characters, do we go for Lizzie? Do we go to the end of the week and Helen having a go at Tom, or do we go for Lizzie in Mega Karen mode, lambasting her volunteer helpers? It was extraordinary because we're doing that one.
I think we're on the same page here. Go for Lizzie. I'm all primed.
Am I wrong? I thought it was absolutely disgraceful the way she talked to these two volunteers.
Well, not just volunteers. The fact that they are adults who are giving their time up to work in this stately home. And she's there saying, even patronizing them at the end when it all turned out to be okay. But there was just this whole point where she was just like, well, this is just not good enough. And why have you swapped this? And, I sat there listening to it this morning. I was like, just wind your neck in, you landed gentry bellend. None of this was yours anyway. You married into it. All right. The Archers aren't the poorest family in the village, of course, because of the agricultural history, but she's real, and Freddie, to be fair, he manages to deal with it in a slightly better way, doesn't he? Whereas Lizzie just comes in and pretty much is lady of the manor. And Oliver, Neil's too nice to say anything about it. And I think Oliver's quite happy to be there. I like the way they traded with Cliff because they felt like, they didn't want to be in the scullery. So they traded. And then later they were envious that Cliff's just rocking it in the scullery with nothing to do. And they're having to show this group of kids around who are all clearly delinquent. That was what was implied, wasn't it? They came from a school which Ofsted had basically said, burn it to the ground.
I didn't work that out. I think obviously you're a lot quicker to imagine that given your, traumatic day life.
Well, they had that mix up about whether it was a retirement home or a school, didn't they? Because it was Aberton, Court, or Wood, and that was the mistake.
Yeah. I mean, I was just bored out of my mind through all of that.
Yeah, no, I know. But Lizzie said, "Oh, it used to be Cocham School." And I went, "Cocham," in real hushed tones, like, "Oh my God, do you remember the report? Like they strung one of the teachers up." And then she's like, "Yeah, that's who's coming." But it was only 10-year-olds, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the thing is that this idea that somehow it's that much, it's like, oh my god, but I prepared for pensioners. What on earth am I going to do? It's like you're going to say the same thing, but just in a with slightly simpler vocabulary. You're going to subtly adjust your speech for the audience. It's not that difficult to skill. Actually, that's quite a risky thing for me to say on a podcast, isn't it? Uh, it's like, well, you haven't done it yet after 105 episodes, Peter. You absolute twat. Yeah.
Cassis tutissima vertis, Peter.
I am guessing that is the Pargita family motto in Latin. I would have thought insufferus tuatus maximus might be a good alternative.
Strangely enough, and with a drop of irony, his virtue is the safest helmet. I wonder if Nigel was wearing that when he launched himself off the roof.
It was what stress test the motto. The last
Yes.
thought through his ridiculously inbred noggin was, oh no, not virtuous enough. His brain splashed all over the courtyard floor.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just it was a tap in, wasn't it?
I mean, I know I swim very much against the tide when it comes to kind of general Archers fandom, and I've outed myself before as I was over the moon when Nigel went. I couldn't stand him.
A lot of people felt that way about him, didn't they? I mean,
Really?
Yeah, a lot of people felt he was a bit toffee nosed, and they were glad to see him go. I mean, I know people, and my auntie in particular, almost gave up on the Archers after they killed him off.
And then the actor did that pity tour of various radio stations and newspapers and stuff. I felt a bit sorry for him, but I also thought, it's a gig. It's a freelance gig, but the fact you've had it for a very long time. I guess it's not nice to be treated impolitely, but also, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just the nature of my work. I mean, your work as well, kind of like being a chef over the years, you do get used to being treated quite brutally and seeing people being treated quite brutally. So maybe maybe I'm a bit too hard nosed, but I was kind of like, well, I think it feels like you've had a pretty good shout of it. But
yeah, I mean, it wasn't just the pity tour. There was he made his own podcast, which he then got a cease and desist about, where he played the ghost of Nigel walking around the village.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, he really did go full beans, didn't he?
Yeah, but then he was big up that they were going to have a second season, and apparently he got told by the BBC, "No, you won't." It was called the Pargeter Triptych, wasn't it? It's really good, actually. I really enjoyed it. Him just walking around with some country sounds and stuff like that, and he's wandering the fields as Nigel's ghost with his dog, whose name I've forgotten.
Could he not just have changed a few names and stuff and just sort of like been a little bit less on the nose?
Well, it wouldn't have been as fun though, because at one point he kind of viewed David from afar and went, "Oh, there he is. Yeah, they still haven't sussed him out for my murder." He really went for it. I think it's still up on Spotify. It was certainly up on YouTube. Yeah, go and check it out. It's really good.
It's good, is it? Okay.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I didn't dislike the actor. As we often say, the two things can be true at once. Like, you can like the actor and also sort of think that it was not that controversial that they killed off a character. But anyway, I don't know. I mean, I hope he's all right now. But as you know, Love Jim, you were the OG when it came to kind of like shouting to the rooftops about your loyalty and love of the man. But I think it's because he's attached to this absolutely ridiculous plot. So here's my position very, very quickly. Justin has legally bought a plot of land and is doing something legal that also has positive environmental vibes. So what? That's it. Like, I mean, if they didn't do the research before, then that's their problem.
Oh, I absolutely said that last week. Justin hasn't done anything wrong.
So what's this all leading to? Because as an audience, how are we supposed to invest in it?
I think there might be some issue with the fact that they haven't been entirely honest about what the land was for. They're going to go for a technicality, aren't they? They're going to take it to, I mean, Jim's probably going to pull strings at the parish council, and yeah, it's going to all come down to the land registry and what people have said the land was going to be used for. And David seems to be quite on board with saying he was deceived, because I don't think he's
Right.
thrilled at all about there being a charging station. I mean, it might get more fun over the next couple of weeks if, like, they go triple agent and Jim starts feeding Justin wildly fantasized plans of how they're going to protest. What that would be, I don't know. But they're gonna lay bombs on the streets or something, or start putting down chicken wire to stop people entering the site. It's just one of these things that they have to. Do you think it gets built? I don't think it gets built, personally.
Unless David suddenly realizes that he can buy electric milking sheds and tractors and any other stuff, and suddenly realizes he's got a very easy resource on his doorstep. I mean, the problem they've got is that is the one that you guys have mentioned a couple of times, that they need traffic, don't they? And
Yeah.
there needs to be jobs, there need to be extra characters. It's too much infrastructure for such a small place.
I mean, one of the most far-fetched points of this whole storyline was when Lizzie, I presume she'd popped over to Brookfield, and she said, "I'm sorry about all of this." And he went, "For what?" She went, "Well, if it hadn't been for me and Vince, who was nameless, you wouldn't have to sell the land." And Dave went, "Oh, no, I don't think about that anymore." And I was like, it's forefront in his mind. Of course he's bloody thinking about it. The fact that they had to sell up a plot of land at Hollow Tree because of her boyfriend, who seems to be conspicuous by his absence at the moment.
Who do you think is the most grudge-holding character in the Archers? I think David has got to be top 3.
He's forgiven Jim quite quickly, hasn't he? Because last week David was going full on crazy about Jim sitting, and this week he seems quite calm about it. And I mean, Jim dragged him to the pub quiz, didn't he? And another great piece of fiction where he said, "I don't want you reaching into your pocket for drinks." I was like, this is David, fat chance.
I mean, Jim went full Bill Cosby on David in the pub, like plying him with as much drink as he possibly could to try and, soften him up. It was I years ago I had someone pour a shot of vodka in every pint I drank through an evening. I had something like 8 or 9 pints, and it almost killed me. I mean, it was absolutely anyway. But I was listening to that. I'm like, well, this is not particularly cool behaviour. Like, plying David with drink after drink after drink, pressuring him. Anyway, I'm not trying to be overly pious.
That said, when it was Tracy's first shift at the Bull, David showed up and got 7 or 8 pints of Shires for free because he kept on telling her she wasn't pouring it quite right.
Does David have a problem? Is that what we're saying? Is that what is that where it's going to end up going? It's just a way of showing that David's got a bit of a drinking problem.
No, I think it's more that he can handle it. I think, although he did get he got hammered one night, didn't he, when Kenton had to let him out, as I seem to recall. Oh God, what was that story where he was like really, really hammered? It was when they made their peace about who was going to do something at the Christmas show. Oh God, is it necessary to remember that? No.
I think even you have to occasionally just let some of this stuff slide from your mind.
Well, I have, because I can't remember what it was.
No, but you're desperately trying to reach around, I don't know. I can't.
I'm always desperately trying to reach around, Peter. That's what I do over Friday evening.
I thought that was vicious rumours Kerry was spreading, but it's good to have it confirmed. Right, from the horse's mouth.
The only thing I remember from that scene, because it was Tracy's first shift, was Kenton said, "I need to let Tracy out," and I thought that made her sound like a whippet. But I don't remember what the actual. It was something to do with the Christmas show and then making peace, and it to do with their mum. God knows.
Well, do you remember we were talking a couple of weeks ago about like what we thought different characters looked like? So you said Tracy being a whippet. They referenced Tracy being quite thin with a kind of pert derriere when Jazza was ogling her in the shop years ago, or however long ago it was ago. And that was one of those moments where I was like, in my head, she looked nothing like she was then described as physically. So, like when they say Susan's quite kind of buxom and curvy, I'm like, yeah, that's what I imagined. But I imagined Tracy was the same. I thought they were like peas in a pod, her and Susan. So when she suddenly became this kind of like Peloton instructor, pert bummed sort of creature, I was quite sort of like, oh, okay, that doesn't really fit with the Whippet comparison was not what I had in my mind.
Well, I mean, once I see an actor, it doesn't take me long to just think, right, that's the character, as we said last week. But I would have to admit, Tracy Horrobin and Susie Riddell, who we've seen face to face because she's been on the podcast and we've seen her on the Zoom call before. Tracy, when I hear her, is still Julia Davis's character in Nighty Night for me. I can't get past
yes. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of have her as Alana Miles of Black Velvet fame. That's what I sort of
really?
envision her as. Yeah, I think quite kind of
That's very different. I mean, it did take, as I said recently, it took me a long time for Chris to stop being Gareth Keenan from The Office, Mackenzie Crook's character. And by the way, I looked up Willow Cottage today, that Brian was so happy to be out of. Bloody lovely. All right, they divided up Willow Farm, and I presume the cottage was like the extension on the back. But I thought it looked fantastic.
Brian seems to be living his best life. I mean, I've got to say, I mean, I don't ever want to be in Brian's position, and I feel, but and do you know what? I'm very lucky. I've never had a kind of a very close bereavement, immediate family. But I think Brian seems to be dealing with it. Obviously, he's allowed to completely go in the other direction, but for the time being, he seems to be making a lot of positive steps. Pronouncing paprika or paprika about 5 different ways is on his way to his cooking course.
I had to rewind that to hear what he'd asked for.
and then Jim immediately came in and said it a different way. But yeah, I immediately looked up ahead of the podcast, because that was today's episode, wasn't it? Was paprika an aphrodisiac? I think it is.
All right.
Cayenne and peppers are both aphrodisiacs, so why wouldn't paprika be? But anyway, yeah.
That's maybe why Jim offered him the smoked one, so later he can be smoking.
Well, I mean, I think a nod to Kerry there.
Yeah, I did put 2 and 2 together and get 4 when Brian was ordering paprika. Then he was cooking something at home, and they'd said that he'd sounded like he was in a loud place, possibly a bar, the night before. I went all caps and tweeted from the Cider Shed Twitter account for the first time in days, because we've all been so busy or on the road, and just put, Brian's having cooking classes. And then within about 2 minutes, it was totally revealed that he was. So yeah, I quite like this idea.
I like the idea in a couple of weeks' time, he's going to suddenly realise just how easy cooking is. And actually,
and totally reevaluate his life with Jenny.
Oh my God, I could have just been doing this myself. All those expensive kitchens, completely unnecessary.
Well, to be fair, I mean, yeah, if it was just about the cost of the kitchens, because he certainly had fun with other women, so it wouldn't be like he'd stuck with Jenny and remained faithful just for the sake of the scran.
Both literally and metaphorically, he had his cake and ate it. So
yeah. So yeah, I quite like that. He totally obliterated a chicken Kiev in the oven. I mean, you've got to be a slight madman to make chicken Kiev at home.
Chicken Kiev is one of those things that's actually quite difficult to do, where you get the little pocket sealed, isn't it? Talking, as a professional chef, do you not think that's like a cut above kind of home cooking, isn't it? Because there's a bit of skill and some tricks to sort of make that work.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you've got a deep fryer to kick it off. I mean, I tried to make chicken cordon bleu with a little pocket the other day in the air fryer, and it was kind of successful, but it's just not the same. You need a bit of kind of unhealthy deep frying.
I haven't said this on air, but thank you for forcing me past my prejudice and getting me to get an air fryer. They are, as all insufferable people say, the best things ever. I'm over the moon.
Did I send you the written composition from one of my students where they were asked to write about an invention that had changed their life? and they all wrote about, the remote control homes, the mobile phone, GPS, and one girl just wrote about the air fryer, and I was like, you're getting an A for this.
Yeah,
It was
good
up
on her.
there with general knowledge quiz supplied by the British Council today that I put out. I posted it, I think, on Twitter, where it was question 17. Margaret Thatcher, who was Britain's first woman prime minister, often was called A, the Stone Lady, B, the Iron Lady, or C, the Evil Lady. And basically anyone that gave the Evil Lady, they mysteriously won the quiz.
Look, I am no fan of Margaret Thatcher, but I would, if I could wave a magic wand and have her in power ahead of what we got now, I'd do it in a second. I mean, that's how bad things have got. That I don't want Margaret Thatcher back, but she's a cut above Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak and all that lot. And and I'm not trying to say anything nice about Margaret Thatcher.
No, because there is nothing nice to say about Margaret Thatcher. Well, the only nice thing to say about her is she's dead.
I tell you what, there is one nice thing you can say about her. She was incredibly unpleasant to Carol Thatcher. So
I actually think a 12-pack of Thatcher's cider would run the country better than the current cabinet.
The current government, yeah, they're not the best, are they?
Have I Got News for You is back tonight. That should be fun.
Ian Hislop did an interview with Jon Stewart that was quite entertaining, which is quite an interesting culture clash to sort of see Jon Stewart interacting with them. It's a lot of fun. I'm hearing Kerry from across the world telling us to get back on topic. I can feel her listening to the podcast next week on the beach going, listen, you two Muppets, enough stories about your life, enough random shite. So what do you want to do? Do you want to do Justin and his stupid car, or do you want to do Tom and Natasha being sellouts?
It's got to be Tom and Natasha.
Oh, okay. You can go for it then.
Tell me something. Is there any value in the expression, well, we should do something terrible because if we don't do it, someone else will?
No. I think that it's one of those situations where everyone's right and everyone's wrong. Right, Helen is right that they're selling out, but her reaction was grotesquely over the top and pious. So Helen-y that you couldn't even kind of contemplate what she was saying. And Tom and Natasha are wrong and right at the same time. Yes, they are selling out, but also ultimately, if they don't take the money, then someone else will. And it's like I think I've referenced it on the pod before. I did some work for the Bahraini royal family via a company they owned. But, to be honest, it wasn't like I was supplying tanks or kind of like, putting bulldog clips on insurgents' nipples or anything. It's like, it was for torture reasons, not sexy reasons. It was just harmless PR work. But so it's like, yes, do I regret doing the work? But
all right,
ultimately,
Natasha,
someone else would have done it. Yeah, no, but I'm thinking it through. And they're dicks, but you kind of like we all do. We all take a bit, not very few people's jobs are morally pure, are they?
Well, mine is.
Trying to think if that's 100% true. I guess it is. I guess it is, isn't it? Yeah. I guess it is. I guess your job is morally pure, but that might be karmic balance for some of the stories we've heard off air.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that after class I sell drugs to them is extracurricular. That's nothing to do with
there is, and as we've hinted at before, there is a reason you change continents every 3 or 4 years. It's just the weight of bodies buried to keep the planet balanced. You have to kind of like switch hemispheres.
Yeah, I mean, let's nip this in the bud. What's going to happen here? So Helen's going to hold a grudge against Tom because she sussed it out that Natasha's coerced him into going for the money, and they're gonna do it's a disposable nappy ad, isn't it? But it's this agrochemical company called Shafting Bass. What are they called?
Someone did a quality joke on Twitter. It was like the shake and vac.
Okay.
I'll see if I can find it.
I mean, I thought shafting bass is what Brian did when he dumped all those chemicals into the am. That's a water pollution fish joke there.
So I'm trying to find it. I can't find. Oh, here we are. They need to do the Schaefer Bass to put the bridge freshness back. So it's Schaefer Bass, I think is the name.
Normally these things happen. Do you remember when Madeline was on and she said that we should have sussed that it was Ben was the father because of what will create the most damage? What she said, the storyline said, throw the rock in the middle and watch in the river and watch the circles spread out, the ripples. Yeah. Well, what's going to happen here? Helen's probably going to not say anything to Pat and Tony. It's going to rumble on, and then Pat's going to be going into Underwoods one day, and there's going to be a Times Square-esque advertising hoarding with the toxic twins, as I think we can now call them, because they work for an agrochemical company, staring down at her. And Pat's going to discover first. It won't be Tony. Pat will discover, and she'll go on the warpath. And that's going to cause all sorts of merry hell at Bridge Farm. And to be honest, if we have to hear Bridge Farm, because there was that moment on Sunday's episode where Natasha chastised them for talking work and said, I thought this was going to be a Bridge Farm free zone. I was like, yeah, we all did, but you're here on Sunday's episode, so we're going to have to hear it. I think if we have to hear them, let's hear them tearing each other apart. And I think that's what's going to happen. Pat's going to go nuts, and Tony's going to be caught in all the middle of it, as is Lee.
I'm going to try and ask you to go on a kind of very difficult mental journey. You've got to try and put aside all prejudices and just imagine these are a bunch of people you've never met or sort of heard of before. If you had the scenario to sort of like describe to you in an adjective-free fashion, do you think Pat would have the right to be angry that Tom and Natasha had done this photo shoot?
Probably not. But the fact that their name is on the brand and it's possible that this gets out some way or another in the community, that they've done this ad for this company, that's damaging to their brand, isn't it? And the fact is, they've got this open day coming up, haven't they, where they're going to have the viewing window. I mean, I'm loving it. The edible forest garden, it's all going to go to shit because they've done a deal with the devil. Fantastic. Bring it on.
So I kind of agree with you. I think that as a family, it's mad that Pat would get cross, but I do think that it's wrong that Tom and Natasha do it because, it's not just their reputation they're playing with. If it was just their farm, if it was just Natasha's business that was on the line, I think she's well within her rights to, play footloose and fancy free with the reputation. But it's not. It's also Helen. It's also Pat and Tony. Yes, as always, the way the plot falls down is credibility. The idea that members of the public are going to give a flying about, whether Bridge Farm, the grandchildren of the owners have done an ad for something. It's just completely implausible. I don't think anyone would ever care. It's like the black farmer who, the guys, the sausages. You'll see them in the shops over here. Have you seen him on like Newsnight and stuff?
No.
It's a guy called the Black Farmer. He is a black farmer.
Oh yes, I know who you're talking about. I know you're talking about.
And anyway, so he's very pro Brexit, and he's been on like Question Time and stuff. And I don't buy his produce because he's a massive Brexiteer, and I can buy other sausages, so I don't buy his stuff. Before I found out it was a massive Brexiteer, I did buy his sausages. So there is an example of me making a decision based on my own personal politics. But I don't think most people will give a monkeys about Bridge Farm's grandchildren's private business. So I think that's where it falls down.
Possibly. I mean, you also tore apart this whole photo storyline in the first place, didn't you? Do you think it's that likely that they would have got this lucrative an offer this quickly?
My original complaint was that that's not how the business works. This idea you do these incredibly expensive photo shoots to try and have a portfolio, because as I said, the children are changing all the time, so you need current photos. So that was my original complaint. But I will say that a friend of mine who was a model who switched from being a catwalk model to a kind of I don't know, I can't remember the terms. I don't claim to be an expert on this stuff. But anyway, she landed the job as woman at bar with lads in Guinness advert. And the significant difference was that it was one of these syndicated ones that went worldwide, like Natasha referenced, and that really did turn that family around because they were a little bit skint, and then she landed this gig, and that put a serious amount of money in her pocket. Because it was on, because as Natasha referenced, it was syndicated in all the territories around the world.
So essentially, if Gazprom, dear listener, knocked on Peter's door tomorrow and said, "Can we have Cyrus in an ad?" Peter would be there.
Gazprom. I don't know. I think I'd say no to Gazprom. Well, let's say if Nestle, I think I would say no to Gazprom. I'd say no to the Bahrain. Just to be clear, I'd say no to the Bahraini royal family now. I just didn't know. I was just naive when I worked for the company. It was for Formula One. It was for Formula One in Bahrain, and I was naive when I worked for them. But anyway, yeah. But no, I'd say no to a lot of people now. I wouldn't want to, but I don't know. Let's pick something. I'll tell you. Okay, here's an interesting one. I don't buy Clarence Cliff, whatever it's called. What's Prince Charles's eggs? What's Prince Charles's company called?
Clarence House.
Clarence House. So I don't buy any of his products because I'm a Republican, and he annoys me. But if they
what products does he have?
Eggs and biscuits and stuff.
Oh, I wouldn't buy his eggs just because I'd be scared he lays them himself.
Let's give him 10 out of 10 for his environmentalism, but there's a lot of other stuff that annoys.
Well, he's been going on about it tonight, isn't he? About the green. Yeah, I mean, he's got a country house not that far from where my dad lives, and apparently the church where my cousin got married in, there's a pew reserved for him. I don't know now that he's king. And if you go in the local shop, they sell all his marmalades and all this kind of stuff. But it's extortionate, and who cares?
He's got a country quite near where I live. Yeah, a whole one.
Shocking.
Yeah. 2 or 3 actually. But yeah, no, but anyway, so there's that would be an interesting test of my politics. A booker, a spotter for Clarence House. They're like, that's the face that's going to sell our eggs. Your little boy, or even mine, my face, Peter. Can you be the face of Clarence? Whatever it's called, eggs. And we're like, oh, I could do with the money. I really could. So,
Charlie Eggs, Peter. Would you be the face of Charlie Eggs?
Wobbly eggs. Chaz's wobbly eggs. Yeah.
Oh well, okay, there you go. It took us 40 minutes, but we found the level.
Seeing as we're talking about ads, should we chuck one in?
Go for it.
So Matthew, there's possibly the least interesting topic saved till last. Justin and Lillian losing their shit over an electric car.
Yes.
How quiet it is, its lights, how refined it is. The dream.
I imagined as they turned it off, it was like Kit from Knight Rider, because she was like, oh, look at how it turns itself off. I imagine like that strobing red light at the front.
Would you like me to make some unwise and immoral investments, Justin?
I watched with my students this week a video about a museum in America that actually has one of the original. What's the brand of car? Why am I forgetting what the brand of car is in Knight Rider? It's a very well-known brand. Oh, that's annoying me.
Pontiac Firebird.
Pontiac, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And apparently that model, they got like the first 5 off the assembly line. But yeah. I don't think you should have another gin, Lillian.
Oh, shut up, you piece of shit. Just crashed the dish. The guy who played Kit didn't want to be credited because he was so ashamed. He was like a proper actor, and he didn't want to be. He didn't want anyone to know that this is how he was earning his money.
When I was a kid, I erroneously thought it was John Lithgow. It clearly wasn't, was it?
I do like actors like John Lithgow and Michael Caine who will sort of, have a full tilt at award season with one role, and the next week it's like Jaws 5 or, playing kit guitar or whatever. I do like the actors who are just like nakedly after the money occasionally. Another one for that is Anthony Hopkins. He'll just take any old shit to pay for his, like his oil paints.
Well, Malcolm McDowell, read an interview with him a few years ago where he said sometimes people will come up to get a selfie with him and they're like, I loved you in blah, blah, blah. And he'd be like, I wasn't in that movie. And they'd be like, yes, you were. And then they bring it up on Wikipedia. And he's like, oh, shit. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Well, he was in Caligula. That really is any old shit. Yeah.
It is. Well, he said it was half good and then half shit because they spliced two halves of the movie together.
Tell me if I'm wrong. Was that paid for by like Larry Flint or something, or some? No. Bob something. It's like he's an Italian American name. But anyway, yes, some American pornographer funded it.
Yeah. No, there was a pornographer that funded it. But half of it was filmed properly with the proper actors like Gielgud and Helen Mirren and Malcolm McDowell, and then they filmed almost exactly the same length of movie again with people genuinely f***ing.
Yeah.
And then just spliced the two together and Malcolm McDowell said like it just got completely lost in the orgy scenes. And he said there is a good movie in there somewhere, but they just totally obliterated it.
I'm hearing Kerry's voice again, Matthew, all the way telling us get back on track.
Don't you have a jingle for that?
What? What you think that somehow I'm just going to pluck a jingle that you created out of thin air?
Well, you never know, mate.
I don't know. Come on, Cobber. What do they say in Australia? Ripper?
I'm ashamed.
How many times do you think Kerry is going to hear the phrase "get your hands off my penis" while she's in Australia?
Have you read the Cider Shed WhatsApp tonight?
No.
She's gone out for a Chinese meal. I'm not joking.
Genuinely? No.
Yeah.
Okay. Bloody hell. For anyone who's confused, we often say we'll put the link in the podcast description. You have to dig out the link or go type in succulent Chinese meal into YouTube. It is arguably top 5 internet memes of all time. It is truly glorious. And then also you get to lose another 15 minutes researching the backstory. But Matthew, so we've been remiss this week. We've barely touched Twitter. So if people wanted to go and find out how little we've been saying the last 7 days, where would they go?
They would go to @the-Cider-Shed pod, which is where Kerry is normally manning or womanning things, but she spent a lot of time traveling down to the Southern Hemisphere this week, so she hasn't been doing that. I jumped on briefly tonight. So yeah, find us there. It's a great laugh, and we have lots of good interactions. We have an Instagram, which is the same handle, @the-Cider-Shed pod. We broke 800. It was only 2 weeks ago we broke 700. Now we broke 800. And our 800th follower was, strangely enough, Graham Harvey, former agricultural storyline advisor of the Archers. So
Archers royalty.
Yeah.
And we are always incredibly grateful to our lovely patrons at patreon.com/thecidershed. The numbers are growing all the time, and it makes a huge difference. Kerry's got her well-earned holiday, and when we do take time off, you really do realise just how much of a schlep it is every week. It's a fun schlep, but a schlep nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, we should be clear at this point that Patreon hasn't paid for Kerry's holiday, Peter. That link might sound a bit tenuous.
Did it not?
No, I'm joking.
No, I mean, people are generous. They're not that generous. But yeah, no, Kerry is by coincidence on holiday this week, and also I'm begging for Patreon. But yeah,
why have the coffers been emptied?
Yeah, exactly. Let me just log in there. Kerry.
I should say we have a new Patreon this week. Jan Tomlin, thanks very much for becoming a Patreon. We really appreciate it.
I think there's a possibility Kerry's going to be here next week. We're going to try and I think we'll probably do a little test at some point, see how it works out time-wise. There is, of course, the small matter of whether she can be asked, because it is she might having a taste of a week off. She might want to make it 2 in a row. But anyway, we'll see. And no doubt there'll be some information on Twitter whether she's going to come back next week. If not, it might be more me and Matthew veering massively off track and talking about anything and everything apart from the Archers.
Well, let me just stop you right there, Pierre. I have it on good authority. She took her microphone with her. So I reckon she will endeavour to be here next week.
Fingers crossed. Technology, time difference, and everything, we can make it work. We'll do our best.
Aye, aye.
Oh, by the way, congratulations to Matthew. He now has the keys to his house. So it's now going to be endless researching of Japanese saws, sandpaper, and workbenches.
Yeah, that's me. For the next 2 months, that'll be what I'm doing. Yeah. Yes, yeah, paying rent for the last time, hopefully in a long time, tomorrow. And then, off into the money pit. Let's go for it.
Well, it feels weird saying goodbye without Kerry for some reason this week, but I guess we have to do it.
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, we could always just add her in, but I could try and fake a Kerry voice. Do you want me to?
Go on then.
Bye.
Actually, that's pretty good. Yeah. See you, Kerry.
Bye.